Imagine stepping onto the field. The noise is just a deafening roar. Your heart is pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs, and you feel this chilling, unavoidable presence just behind you. The man you fear most is somewhere in the chaos, but you can't see him.
And then a whisper.
Yeah, a whisper, cold and menacing, that just cuts through all that noise. Don't worry where I am. I'll tell you when I get there.
That line from the one and only Lawrence Taylor, or LT. I mean, that wasn't just standard football trash talk. That was a declaration of systemic violence. It was a promise of physical jeopardy so profound that it didn't just rattle quarterbacks. It fundamentally broke and then painstakingly reshaped the entire strategic and financial foundation of professional football.
Okay, so let's really unpack this with the level of detail it deserves. Our mission today is a deep dive into two stories that seem separate but are, perfectly intertwined.
They really are.
On one side, you have the cold, hard, strategic, and financial evolution of the NFL's line of scrimmage. And on the other, you have the astonishing, unlikely, and just deeply human journey of Michael Oher, a high school junior whose unique, almost mythical physical gifts made him the embodiment, the literal multi-million-dollar fulfillment of this whole evolution.
The convergence is just fascinating. I mean, if the NFL is a game of continuous systematic improvement, what happens when one player, just one singular violent force, demands a radical change in the system, in strategy, and in salary structure?
Right.
The big question we're really chasing is this. How did a position once viewed as the most interchangeable and invisible role in the league, the anonymous protector, how did that become one of the most highly compensated? And what kind of impossible physical and personal specs were suddenly required for this new rarefied job? We're looking at market forces, we're looking at engineered strategy, and the ultimate human triumph when those forces collide.
To really get the sheer magnitude of the shift LT caused, you have to rewind the tape and grasp what the offensive line was like before him. Our sources paint a very clear picture of just how overlooked these guys were.
Oh, completely.
Andrew Jacoby, a truly great left tackle for the Washington Redskins' famous Hogs offensive line, a group so dominant people dressed up as pigs for them, he had this classic telling quote.
He called offensive linemen the stay-at-home mothers of the NFL.
Yeah.
It's a perfect, almost brutal analogy.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone from the fans to the TV commentators paid polite lip service to their importance, saying, oh, the line is crucial.
Sure, yeah.
But almost no one could actually tell you what they did or which player did what specific job. They were praised as a unit, but totally erased as individuals.
And the most important word here, we have to define it, is fungibility. For anyone unfamiliar, fungibility means they were completely interchangeable.
Like assets.
Exactly. If one lineman went down, you just slotted in the next guy and expected the exact same result. The anecdote Jacoby tells proves this better than any stat. He said people who claimed to be huge fans of the Hogs couldn't tell them apart.
That's amazing.
He'd have people see him in public and literally scream, "Hey, May!" mistaking him, Jacoby, a great white left tackle, for Mark May, his black teammate who played right tackle. The individual skills were just submerged into the unit's success, and financially they were paid like interchangeable parts.
And that anonymity, that assumption of fungibility, was exactly what Lawrence Taylor, in his debut season in 1981, instantly and violently shredded. Before LT, the offensive line was functional. After LT, it was fundamentally broken.
His arrival was just unprecedented. He was a force that demanded not just a tactical response from his opponents, but what felt like a biological explanation from everyone who watched him. A Redskins lineman trying to describe Taylor's impossible gifts, he summed it up best.
I think I know what you're going to say.
He said, no human being should be 6'4", 245, and run a 4.5 40. That specific blend of massive size and explosive wide receiver level speed, it just shouldn't exist in nature, or at least it hadn't on a football field before him.
But here's where the real insight is, and it comes from Bill Parcells, his coach. Parcells correctly saw that LT's size and speed were just the delivery mechanism. What was truly precious way more valuable than an inch of height or a tenth of a second in the 40 was his peculiar energy and mind.
So it was mental.
It was mental. Parcells saw him as relentless, manic, operating with these almost grandiose ambitions for his own performance, no matter what the team's record was. He was intensely competitive and had a singular, aggressive focus on his objective, which was almost always the physical destruction of the man in front of him.
And his aggression wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. He had this calculated strategy to lull the massive, slower tackles into making mistakes. For instance, the sources say he would literally just trot off the ball looking relaxed.
Right, trying to lure guys like Jacoby into putting their hands up before he even got there.
Exactly, the moment the tackle latched on.
Boom. A massive, frightening explosion of violence. He'd knock their hands away and shoot past, leaving the tackle completely unbalanced and defeated.
And if you need any more proof of that aggression, that terror he inspired, just look at his own infamous quote after hitting quarterback Ron Jaworski.
Oh, this one's rough.
He described his signature over-the-head axe job blow by saying, "I thought his dick was going to drop in the dirt."
Right.
It was visceral, it was personal, and it signaled to every quarterback in the league that they were now in a combat zone where their physical safety was genuinely at risk. The rules had changed.
This level of targeted violence created a systematic vulnerability that LT immediately and, scientifically exploited.
Yeah.
The blind side. For a right-handed quarterback, which is pretty much everyone then and now, their left side, the side closest to the defense's rush, is totally exposed. You can't see the rush coming. It is literally your blind side.
Yes.
LT, coming off the defensive left edge, just systematically exploited this. He created the immediate, critical, existential need for a specialized, uniquely capable protector right where the quarterback was most vulnerable.
And that vulnerability meant injured quarterbacks and ruined careers. I mean, the sources mentioned that horrifying, sickening sound of Jay Theismann's leg just snapping under Taylor's hit on Monday Night Football. It shocked the nation.
And what's crucial to remember is that Theismann's great left tackle, Andrew Jacoby, was standing on the sidelines when it happened. He'd been subbed out just moments before.
Wow.
That injury, that sound, it cemented this universal fear across the NFL. You must have an elite, singular answer for that blindside predator, or your entire offensive investment, your quarterback, is gone. The market had just defined a singular, indispensable asset, the blindside protector.
The tactical response to all this chaos didn't just come from bigger players, right? It was a revolution in system design led by the cerebral, almost academic genius of Bill Walsh.
Exactly. Walsh had this unusual, almost industrial view of the quarterback position. He believed they were only as good as the system they played in, not their individual talent. He thought of his offense as engineered.
It's so interesting that the sources compare it to total quality management, like a Japanese auto plant that prioritizes precision, consistency, and predictability.
It's a deeply cynical, but, super effective approach. Walsh made heroes of his quarterbacks, but he didn't necessarily believe in them personally. He believed in the system. He designed plays with clockwork timing, where success wasn't about some heroic, improvised scramble, but just mechanical execution.
And the West Coast offense, the WCO, was born from weakness, which is something we often forget. He was coaching the expansion Bengals, forced to coach what he called comically inadequate players,
Including a weak-armed quarterback named Virgil Carter, who physically couldn't throw the ball more than 20 yards downfield without it turning into this slow, desperate wobble.
So the system was literally designed to compensate for physical problems across the board. It was all short, well-timed passes, prioritizing guile and timing over raw power.
And the beauty of the WCO was that this quick rhythm passing minimized the risk of a huge career-ending hit because the quarterback got rid of the ball in 2 seconds or less. Walsh intentionally made the passing game dull and safe, as he put it, because predictable, short completions were safer and more efficient than long, risky throws.
And it worked.
It worked. It was ridiculed at first as a nickel and dime offense because they weren't throwing these thrilling bombs, but the efficiency was superior. By 1971, Virgil Carter, the weak-armed QB, was suddenly leading the entire league in completion percentage. The WCO proved you could move the ball safely and consistently, and by the late 90s, everyone in the NFL was running some version of Bill Walsh's offense.
But even Walsh's meticulously engineered system, designed to protect the quarterback, it wasn't enough against Lawrence Taylor. Walsh himself admitted that Taylor was so quick that no matter how quickly we executed, he could still get there.
LT basically smashed the safety window of the perfect system. He proved that even 2 seconds isn't fast enough if the left tackle can't hold his ground for that tiny, critical window.
Which brings us to the tipping point, that 1982 playoff game against Parcells' Giants. Walsh had to improvise protection for Joe Montana because his regular left tackle just couldn't handle LT alone.
And his solution was radical. He switched John Ayers, a left guard, into the tackle spot.
And the sources give us such incredible color on Ayers. This wasn't some finesse guy.
Not at all.
He was a tough Texan, described as a cowboy who, in the offseason, literally branded and castrated bulls. I mean, that detail alone tells you everything about the kind of primal, non-fungible toughness Walsh was now looking for. Ayers dropped back and was just an impenetrable wall against Taylor. He neutralized him.
So effectively that at halftime, Montana had completed 15 of 22 passes for 276 yards. Montana later said he played like a kid who'd been given the answers to the test in advance because the threat was just gone. Ayers' success was immediate, real-world proof that specialized protection could work.
But Parcells, the guy who knew LT best, he dismissed it, right? He blamed it on the field, calling it a mud pile and a slow track.
He did, but that dismissal kind of proved the point. If even the great Bill Walsh had to use an anomaly, a bull-castrating left guard, to stop Taylor, wasn't Parcells basically admitting that no standard, interchangeable lineman could handle him?
Right.
Absolutely. Parcells knew that on a faster field, that improvised move would probably fail. It would force teams to slide the line to Taylor, which means the whole line shifts toward him. But in doing that, you create huge weaknesses everywhere else. Parcells knew the only real answer was to find an extremely gifted at the left tackle position who could handle LT one-on-one every single play.
And this convergence, the WCO making the passing game more valuable, and LT proving that system was fatally vulnerable without elite protection, that led directly and immediately to the financial restructuring of the offensive line.
This is where the money starts following the fear.
Exactly.
The data on this shift is just irrefutable proof that the whole fungibility idea was dead. By 2004, the blindside protectors, the left tackle's LT, ironically, were paid significantly more than anyone else on the line.
Get this. The 5 most highly paid left tackles were earning nearly $3 million a year, more than the 5 most highly paid right tackles.
And more than running backs and wide receivers.
More than the 5 most highly paid running backs and the 5 most highly paid wide receivers. Think about that. The protector was getting paid more than the protected stars who sold the jerseys.
It's just astonishing. But the moment that truly codified it, that guaranteed the blindside protector's supreme value, was the Will Wolford contract with the Indianapolis Colts.
Yes, 1993. Wolford was a huge free agent, and he signed a big deal, $7.65 million over 3 years. But the number wasn't the market-breaking part.
No, it was the clause. A guaranteed clause his agent insisted on. Wolford would remain the highest-paid player on the Colts' entire offense for as long as he played there.
Wait, let's just sit with that. That means if the Colts went out and signed the most expensive quarterback in the league, Wolford's salary would automatically jump to be higher than his.
Exactly. It was a contractual built-in guarantee that the value of the protection would always outweigh the value of the asset being protected. It was a direct financial answer to the question, how much would I pay to have Lawrence Taylor erased from my quarterback's life? And the answer was, contractually, more than anyone else on the offense.
So the money is there. The price of fear is set. But finding this singular human, this new prototype that could handle the world's most dangerous pass rushers, that's where Tom Lemming comes in. He's the scout, driving 50,000 to 60,000 miles a year, looking for the physical ideal that justifies that paycheck.
And the new physical specs for this hyper-valued position, they were just big. They were described as a freak of nature. I mean, 250 pounds used to be huge for a high school lineman in the 70s. Now you needed to be 300 pounds plus, just to start.
And it wasn't just mass, right? It was about specific physical geometry that could counter the speed and power of modern pass rushers.
Totally. We're talking about these rare details. The ideal left tackle had to be wide in the ass and massive in the thighs. That girth gave them leverage so a rusher couldn't just run over them. They needed long arms to keep guys at a distance. And maybe most importantly, giant hands, so that when they grabbed a hold of you, it meant something.
It prevented that initial violent hand slap that LT perfected.
Exactly. And this specific blend of size, length, and agility created a scarcity problem. We saw it in guys like Jonathan Ogden, 6'9", 320 in high school, and Orlando Pace, 6'6", 310. These guys were described as physically unlike most humans. Even guys who got paid, like Will Wolford himself, were eventually deemed physically inadequate by the new standards. Too short arms, not enough girth. The mold was broken.
And this brings us to Michael Oher. Lemming finds him in 2004, and everything about him feels weird. He played for a small, unknown private school, Briarcrest Christian, which had zero history of producing Division I talent, and didn't typically have black students, let alone athletes.
Oher was a total mystery. Lemming was used to finding guys with pedigree, But Oher had no production, no honors, no achievements. The film just showed he was big, fast, and fantastically explosive. Lemming, almost against his better judgment, was afraid not to include him on his All-American list based on that raw gift alone. He said the last time he'd seen that kind of physical talent was Orlando Pace.
But that mystery immediately set off Lemming's alarms. Character risk. He'd seen hundreds of NFL-caliber talents lost to crime, bad grades, self-destructive behavior.
Yeah, he cited guys like Eric Jefferson, who went to prison, and Michael Burden, a massive prospect who just vanished. Football attracts aggressive people, but the game has limits on pathological behavior.
And Lemming's in-person meeting with Oher was just bizarre. Oher sits down, and Lemming's first thought is, his hands are huge.
Yeah.
And then Oher refused to speak. He met every single question with complete, total silence.
So Lemming mentally puts this huge asterisk next to his name, thinking, I thought he was trouble. He couldn't gauge the kid's heart or aggression, which, ironically, is paramount for that position.
Now we have to zoom out and see how he even got to this white, wealthy school. The person who brought him was Big Tony Henderson, a man who is 6'3" and nearly 400 pounds. Tony grew up in Hurt Village, a dangerous, gang-controlled housing project in West Memphis.
And Tony's motive was deeply personal. He was fulfilling his dying mother's wish to get his son Stephen a Christian education. It was a desperate attempt to break the cycle of poverty and violence.
So Big Tony was basically pioneering this difficult integration in reverse. Briarcrest, as the sources explain, was founded in the 70s as part of this private school system that popped up after court-ordered integration and white flight. It was a bastion of affluence.
Right. And no one who worked there could remember a poor black person from the West Side ever marching in to enroll a child. Big Tony, with his son Stephen and Michael in tow, was the absolute first. This context just highlights the profound social paradox of Oher even being there.
And Michael, or Big Mike, he was statistically heading for a terrible end. Big Tony knew Michael was certain to drop out, and if he did, he'd be dead, in jail, or selling drugs. He was the raw material, the physical prototype, but socially and academically, he was completely unformed.
The contrast when he got to Briarcrest was just jarring. Hugh Freeze, the young shrewd head coach, was told Big Tony brought another boy. When 16-year-old Michael Oher, at 6'5", maybe 330 pounds, stepped into his office, Freeze's internal thought was just, good God, he's a monster.
Wow.
But Freeze, despite his excitement, realized he had an academic nightmare on his hands the moment he saw the transcript.
This monster on the hoof, this ultimate prototype, was an academic zero. His initial record was a train wreck. A .6 GPA, missed over 15 days of every class, and the D's he did get were clearly just gifts from the basketball coach to keep him eligible.
And the cultural deficit was just as striking. The principal, seeing Oher, said the boy was almost nonverbal and seemed lost as a Martian. He literally had to show Michael how to shake hands, so just basic social cues. Teachers wanted him out almost immediately because he wasn't just failing tests, he wasn't even starting them, he'd just sit there.
Because he didn't know how.
He didn't know the first step. The void in his knowledge was staggering. He didn't know what an ocean was, what a bird's nest was, didn't know about the tooth fairy, basic cultural things every kid just absorbs. The Memphis public schools tested him, ruled out learning disabilities, and just labeled him stupid.
It's like total sensory deprivation. He lacked the fundamental knowledge most of us pick up just by living. He was a blank slate, not because he was unintelligent, but because he was denied the basic input to form experience and classroom skills.
But a little light came through. A biology teacher, Marilyn Beasley, was shocked to discover Michael knew enough to get a C on a test. When she asked how, she realized he absorbed everything visually, not through reading or lectures. His brain wasn't disabled, he just didn't know how to learn in a traditional classroom. This visual intelligence hinted at the massive, specialized potential hidden behind that silence.
And then the Tuohys enter. Sean and Leanne, who provided the necessary financial, domestic, and emotional structure. Sean Tuohy, an Ole Miss basketball star, he deeply understood the poor kid's plight. He'd been that kid in private school who had to bum lunch money. So, at first, he just paid for Michael's lunch card and later his tuition. He said his only connection with Michael was lunch.
And Sean's background shaped his whole philosophy. He believed the hard thing is to build a kid up. He'd been controlled by a tyrannical college coach who, on Christmas Day, greeted the team with dressed, stretched, and taped 30 minutes, and later told Sean, hey, 12, Merry fucking Christmas. Sean understood the destructive power of tyranny.
Leanne, his wife, brought this equally intense, if highly combustible personality, a mix of tenderness and willfulness. She'd save earthworms from the sidewalk, but then scream at drunk men for cutting in line. She was provoked by Michael's silence and used these subtle, persistent ways to integrate him, like playing black radio, 103.5 FM, and setting up a shopping trip. She drove him into a less affluent neighborhood, making him the protector.
Yeah, she asked him, I'm okay going there with you. You're going to take care of me, right?
And that trip led to the emotional breakthrough. As they moved into what the census had called the third poorest zip code in the country, Leanne admitted she had never been there. And Michael finally spoke up, sensing her discomfort. He said with deep sincerity, "Don't worry, I got your back."
Wow, the dynamic just completely reverses. The protector starts protecting his family.
The ultimate intervention came when Michael was staying with Big Tony and overheard Big Tony's girlfriend calling him a freeloader. Leanne, furious that Michael's life wasn't stable, just demanded he move in. Her command was absolute. "Get all your crap, you're moving in with me."
And he crosses this new threshold with a single Glad trash bag of his stuff. His first night there, Leanne buys him a new bed and a dresser. He just stares at the bed, absolutely stunned, and says, "This is the first time I ever had my own bed."
The sheer domesticity of their life was a shock. He hoarded everything, food, clothes, money, because he just didn't believe the stability would last.
And despite the academic deficits, Michael had this incredible physical intelligence. He was drafted onto the track team as a shot putter, but the coach encouraged the discus, even though that spinning motion isn't really suited for a massive lineman's body.
Yeah, it requires this fluid, graceful technique. The coaches showed him videos because none of them could teach it. Michael, who had never seen a discus before, just watched the other kids, watched the video once, and then threw it himself, winning the meet immediately. The coach saw him practicing later and was like, "Oh my God, he's spinning, he's figured it out." He taught himself through visual observation, proving he was not just big, but graceful. The final piece of the puzzle was aggression. Sean needed to know if Michael had the fire in the belly required to neutralize an LT-type player.
And that fire appeared violently during a scrimmage against Munford High. A defensive end was just relentlessly trash-talking him, screaming stuff like, "Hey, fat ass! I'ma kill you!"
And Michael's quiet rage resulted in a highly unusual excessive blocking penalty. He picked up the 220-pound defensive end and just moved him 60 yards down the field. He drove him across the line of scrimmage, past the sidelines, and kept driving him right up against the fence near the bus parking lot.
When Sean asked him where exactly he was taking the player, Michael, just eerily calm and serious, said, "I was going to put him on the bus."
He wasn't joking. He just thought the guy had talked too much and it was time for him to go home. Sean, realizing the immense potential in that channeled, terrifying aggression, just started laughing. He thought there might be a fire in this belly after all. He had the prototype, the grace, and the killer instinct.
But with all that confirmed, Michael finished his senior year with a 2.05 GPA. I mean, a massive achievement from where he started, but still way below the NCAA requirement of 2.65. So the NCAA hurdle was next, and the clock was ticking.
This is where Sean's cynical, calculated understanding of loopholes becomes crucial. He approached American higher education like a rich man's accountant cracks the tax code. He found that Fs could be replaced with As from BYU correspondence courses, known as character courses, if the student was officially classified as learning disabled.
It was a very specific mechanism. The BYU courses were accelerated and recognized, and the learning disabled classification was key because the testing confirmed Michael wasn't stupid, but his IQ, initially measured at 80, was severely compromised because he had so little experience. The years of neglect had created these profound deficits.
Right.
The psychologist even observed he was absorbing knowledge. You see it in 7-year-olds. He learned something new from every test, proving how absurd it is to treat IQ as some fixed number when his environment had been so empty.
So the loophole worked. He was technically learning disabled because of his environment, which allowed him to take the accelerated courses over the summer and boost his GPA. He ended up making all A's and B's in his final semester, jumping from dead last to 154th in his class. He was now eligible, and his market value was about to explode.
Once Tom Lemming's report named Michael Oher the best offensive line prospect since Orlando Pace, the floodgates just opened. College coaches came in platoons. And because of NCAA rules, they had to sit on the sidelines during practice and just stare, what they call watching him on the hoof, or just dial his number constantly.
It was an absolute circus. Phil Fulmer, the huge head coach from Tennessee, missed a flight home just to get a glimpse of this prototype, and Oher, despite his silence, was playing them all. He'd innocently lead every coach on, telling Alabama he was interested, telling Oklahoma they're at the top of my list, telling Hugh Freeze that Tennessee was his lifetime dream. The silent kid suddenly held all the power.
And the ethical complexities in the sources are fascinating, especially with Hugh Freeze. Michael started calling him the Snake because he realized Freeze had been negotiating with Tennessee for a job and trying to get Michael to go there. After Michael chose Ole Miss, Freeze immediately announced he too was going to Ole Miss. Michael was a negotiation tool, and he knew it.
And Leanne used her own pincer movement to make sure Michael had a support network at Ole Miss. She called the head coach and told him point blank that if he wanted Michael Oher, he had better offer a scholarship to Michael's friend, Justin Sparks, the place kicker.
So he'd have a familiar face.
Exactly. And the coach quickly complied. She also brought in Miss Sue, Michael's tutor, who was an Ole Miss grad, and provided relentless pressure, even joking that Knoxville, Tennessee was where the FBI studied decomposing body parts to keep him away.
So Michael chose Ole Miss because of the Tuohys and his own need for that structure. But his freshman season was a disaster, despite his talent. He struggled at the guard position because the complex SEC offense was a maze of dense auditory jargon, rip, willy, filly. He was a visual learner, and he just couldn't think on his feet when the defense shifted.
So he's a visual learner, and they're just throwing jargon at him?
Right. And Sean immediately intervened. He told the coaches Michael wouldn't respond to X's and O's on a chalkboard. He needed visual, tactile aids. He told them, if you take him aside and explain it to him using mustard bottles and ketchup bottles on a table, not only will he remember it, he'll remember it for the rest of his life. It was about adapting the instruction to the rare cognitive style of the prototype.
And Coach O, the head coach, eventually got it.
Yeah, he realized his mistake. I mean, Michael looked lost and passive all year, but still earned freshman All-American honors just on raw ability. Coach O admitted later he should have just put him at left tackle from day one, the position designed for the non-fungible athlete, and let him figure it out with his physical intelligence.
The sheer strength of Michael's market value created this immediate, powerful dynamic shift. Sean realized the Ole Miss coaches needed Michael infinitely more than Michael needed them. Their careers, their recruiting, their success depended on keeping this prototype happy.
And Leanne made sure they knew Michael could always transfer if they messed up, making his value indestructible.
This massive family and institutional investment reached its most critical, violent point during an incident in the study hall. Michael, now a freshman, assaulted a teammate, Antonio Turner, after Antonio said something deeply derogatory about Collins and Leanne Michael's white mother and sister.
Michael walked across campus, just calmly stalking him. When he found Antonio, he charged, driving the 230-pound man into the ground. He then picked him up by the throat like a rag doll and threw him across the room. In the chaos, he accidentally hit a 3-year-old child, the son of a tutor, who was thrown against the wall, leaving the little boy briefly in a pool of blood.
Oh, my God.
The crisis was immense. Miss Sue screamed, "He's going to jail! It's all over!" Sean, who was traveling far away, went into immediate fix-it mode from a movie lobby in Seattle, getting a lawyer moving heaven and earth to contain the damage.
And the significance of this, following the illiteracy, the car crash, the NCAA investigation was profound.
It was. Michael's past, that cycle of violence, kept trying to reclaim him. But the white world was now too deeply and financially invested in him to let him fail. They secured the lawyer, contained the incident. The cycle was broken, not by charity alone, but by the convergence of brute market force and the persistent protective efforts of a family.
The sources reveal this truly remarkable convergence. The financial and strategic evolution of football, driven by the unique threat of Lawrence Taylor and the strategic response of Bill Walsh, created a multi-million-dollar need for a specific, physically rare specimen.
And Michael Oher, despite having an IQ of 80 and years of neglect, became that specimen through the persistent, if sometimes chaotic, intervention of a family who gave him structure. As Sean Tuohy said, Michael was made comfortable in the way that a blind man became comfortable in a well-furnished room. He'd memorized the contents of the room so perfectly that his blindness became irrelevant.
It's an incredible conclusion, but despite all that help, there's this fascinating, lingering question of agency. Michael himself refused to credit the change to anyone else or to believe failure was ever an option. He insisted, "I'm exactly the same guy I was back in Hurt Village. The only thing that's changed for me is the environment."
He refused to believe he had changed, only that his surroundings had. He saw his success as a destiny he was already fulfilling.
And that perspective, that astounding outcome, had immediate social effects. Michael's story spurred a wave of applications from poor Black inner-city kids to Briarcrest, a school that had historically resisted integration, because he proved a path was possible.
Which leaves us with this. This incredible story of a $10 million position being filled by a kid who started with nothing, who only had this raw, perfect physique. It raises a crucial question for all of us looking at social and economic divides. In a world of stark inequality, is the most powerful catalyst for change often an unexpected convergence of cold, hard market force and selfless, persistent, if deeply imperfect, personal intervention?